What is up, everybody? Welcome inside the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven, and I am your host as always. And joining me this afternoon is my guy Tyler. Tyler, what's up, man? How you doing today?
I'm doing okay. Last time there wasn't much with this linebacker group to love, but I went to bat for one Ventrell Miller from Florida, only to find out a few minutes later that he was 24 going on 25. And then, thank you, YouTube comments. You let me know that he had a fractured foot, and that's why he missed the Senior Bowl, and that he was suspended his freshman year due to a misdemeanor marijuana charge. So I hope this goes better today, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, definitely a learning experience when you go to bat for a guy like that and it just doesn't work out. I remember a similar case for our first year with Jason and I both being like really pumped up about, I can't remember who it was. I think it might have been like a corner or something like that. And then same kind of thing, people in the comments and responding to us on Twitter like, probably not on the board. So it's never a good feeling. What is a good feeling is watching this interior offensive line class after watching the linebacker class. This class is truly a fantastic group. I graded 14 and honestly could have added 3 or 4 more on here. There's also some player conversions that we could touch on. So I'm excited about this one as well. And also quick shout out to everybody who responded to my tweet about upgrading my office chair. I got a gamer chair and I'm feeling great.
Wow.
It's a nice comfy gamer chair. So ended up deciding to go with the one from Costco, and Costco has everything apparently. But yeah, man, feeling great. The chair is fantastic and setting up was nice and easy. So appreciate everybody for letting me know what's up there.
Yeah, I'm jealous of the whole chair thing because I don't want to get one that ends up being too short or one that ends up being too tall or something or doesn't fit the space or whatever. So good for you for finding one that works. Shout out my mom for winning a silent auction and getting that Keenan Allen signed jersey for me here over my shoulder.
I didn't even notice. That's how driven I am today.
Yeah, all good. You don't pay attention to anything I say or do. That's totally fine, Steven. No, but appreciate it, Mom. Thank you so much.
That's super cool. Super cool. For what it's worth, most of the gamer chairs do have like an adjustable headset like mine. I don't know if you can really tell, but it's kind of out of the way. So it looks great. All right. So we like I said, we're going to talk about this interior offensive line group today. An underrated need for the Chargers as they currently don't really have anybody else on the backup roster that they particularly like or that I would feel comfortable with. So, definitely a need. A lot of people talking about finding a center of the future as well. So we'll see what kind of conversation comes up there. After we give our rankings for the interior offensive line, we're going to jump into a Q&A. So make sure to get those draft questions ready. Oh, we got a Galadriel appearance. All right, there we go. So yeah, like I said, if you feel so inclined to do a super chat today, we appreciate that as always. If you are listening to this, make sure and leave a rating or review on the audio podcast platforms. We always appreciate those comments there as well. So, all right, Tyler, let's jump right in here in terms of the interior offensive line class. I'm excited to see what comes up. No, you're good. There you go. All right, so I'll jump in here first to give my player who just missed here. And that is going to be John Gaines from UCLA. I think there's some technique issues that need to be hammered out, in general. I mean, that's kind of the case from most of these guys. And I don't think he has, the strongest punch, so to speak. But there's so much to like when it comes to John Gaines, in particular, like his fit with the Chargers. I think it is pretty seamless because he does show the ability to be powerful and wash down defenders in gap blocks. He's a hyper athlete as well at the position, and that really shows up on tape how explosive he is out of his stance, how fluid he looks out in space. This UCLA offensive line in general was a lot of fun to watch. And Gaines, has that position flexibility that the Chargers really have, preferred to take chances on. He started a ton of games at both guard spots. Has also, started a couple games here and there at center and right tackle. So he's experienced at 4 of the 5 spots. I'd be most comfortable, obviously, with him as a swing guard. I think he probably could potentially become a center down the road. But I think when it comes to, position flex, when it comes to athleticism, John Gaines is something that I think absolutely makes a lot of sense for the Chargers. and I would be very excited if the Chargers ended up picking him on day 3.
Yeah, I actually thought you would have Gaines on your top 8, but again, this is a really, really good class, and you watched 14 guys. I understand why he wouldn't be. Gaines probably set the record for most like steps put in by an offensive lineman. I feel like, you look at, you talk about sideline to sideline players, you're talking about linebackers maybe or safeties, but Gaines moves all over for UCLA, and it really showed the athleticism that he displayed and his rare trait of, I forget what the exact number is, but the threshold that you have to hit, he's the guy who hit it, and you can see it. And if you're someone who's looking at him in round 4, round 5 or wherever he's projected to go, I think he could go earlier because of what he can do and because of that athleticism. But man, like, this is a really, really good class. He did make my top 8. I only watched 10, but fantastic guy. I do have, as we talked about on the show with the mock draft episode previously, someone sort of similar with the same kind of athleticism in Braden Daniels, higher than Gaines, but Gaines is just, he's fast, he's nimble, he's everything that you talked about. He's a really good player.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm excited to see where he ends up. I think he is being a little bit slept on in this class as somebody who wasn't even like a Senior Bowl guy. He wasn't even a Shrine Bowl guy. He was NFL PA Bowl, which is pretty surprising to look back at this whole process. So there's a lot to like with John Gaines. His teammate, Antonio Mafi, is somebody I graded as well and didn't make the list. But, he's an intriguing prospect too. So, the Chargers need an interior offensive lineman, and I think this is a great draft to have that need penciled in.
Yeah, absolutely. So you don't see as much center with him.
No, I think he could do it in a pinch, but I think I'd be more comfortable with him as a straight up guard prospect.
Yeah, I would agree. Okay, my just missed is Luke Whippler. Sorry,
I think it's Whippler.
Luke Whippler. Luke.
Yeah.
Whippler of Ohio State. The center for them, the other person, I guess, because I only graded 10, was Emil Ekiyor from Alabama. Again, like, it's so rough putting these guys at 9 or 10 because I do think that like the difference between this guy at 9 versus at my just missed versus the linebackers just missed, big gap. But huge. Whippler, yeah. So actually, looking at my big board, the bottom 4 players on my big board are linebackers that we talked about or were off my list last time. So much better interior offensive line class. Whippler's a solid prospect. I think 50% of the time he does things well. I think there's moments where he moves guys with ease, does all the century things that you would want. I just feel like the other half of the time, and especially compared to some of the other centers that are higher up on my list, I feel like he just loses his leverage and balance a bit more often than I would like to see. The rest of the guys can really bring the rest of themselves and maintain their balance. Finish plays. Whippler, I think, is just kind of hit or miss with that. So it's more of a consistency thing here. But if I grade 5 more players, I graded 10. So if I graded 5 more players, he ended up 15th. And you get this player, he's like a quote unquote average player, in my opinion. And these are 15th in this class. That shows that the class is really, really good. I think Whippler is just really, really solid, a solid average center prospect. So he's in my just missed.
Yeah, I graded him as well. I didn't necessarily love him, but he has an elite RAS score. For his work at the combine, obviously. So I have him as a 4th round grade, a high 4th round grade, and that just kind of shows, like you're talking about, where this class is at. So. John Gaines is my 9th interior offensive lineman. I still have a 3rd round grade on him. And if you look at some of these other positions, right, like you talked about linebacker, but, even a position group like interior offensive line, my 9th interior defensive line, excuse me. So just kind of the opposite here. Siaki Ika was my 9th defensive tackle, and he was a mid 4th rounder for me. So this interior offensive line group is really, really good. It goes deep into like the 4th, 5th rounds where I have a player that I would be very happy with liking. And so this center class in particular, like, you obviously have kind of the guys at the top in John Michael Schmitz, Joe Tippmann, who I'm a big fan of. But then you get down into Olu Owatimi, I'll probably butcher that, I'm sorry, Luke Whippler, Ricky Stromberg, Juice Scruggs. So there's a lot of center prospects in this class. So the Chargers, again, this is kind of a conversation that we can have if we really want to, if you're trying to find that like heir apparent to Corey Linsley, this is a great group to draft from. And so this is kind of also, an instance where like I would love the Chargers to be able to trade back and get an additional pick. So if they want to take a true center and maybe like a swing tackle or a swing guard, they could do it that way. Right now with 7 picks, if you're taking 2 offensive linemen, that's kind of pushing it a little bit. I mean, obviously I would be happy with that. But from like a sheer like roster construction, that'd be kind of dicey. But overall, this center class is fantastic. This interior offensive line class in general is fantastic. So, somebody like Luke Whippler didn't make my list, but I think he's a quality day 3 center prospect for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And when we get to the end of this, I'd love to pick your brain because you watched more players and obviously more centers than I did. I'd love to pick your brain about kind of where you have these guys ranked in terms of where they might go as well. Because I think it's a sneaky thing that the Chargers might pull off.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll get to the next group here, which is our official top 8. So, I do have my guy Braden Daniels in here.
Nice.
He's kind of he played offensive tackle for Utah, obviously, and we can talk about him in a second. At number 7, make sure I have the list right. At number 7, I have Chandler Zavala from NC State. Which he was not really on my radar until I watched his interview with the Bootleg guys, Bootleg podcast. They do great work over there. So, because he's lower on the rankings, the consensus rankings.
Yeah,
it wasn't until that I actually like started like paying attention to him and watching him. So, that's number 7 for me. And then number 6, I have Andrew Voorhees from USC. I know that he has the ACL injury right now. Frankly, his film is just so good, so strong. So yeah, I'll talk about Braden Daniels for a second here. He's somebody who's an athletic freak. I think he's like in the 99th percentile in terms of interior offensive line. Some people expressed some concern about him weighing 297 pounds at the combine. He weighed 294 at the combine and then 307 at the pro day. So in the span of like 5-6 weeks, he gained 13 pounds for the pro day. So I think his play weight is probably in like that 300 to 305 pound range for the NFL. So he's never really going to be that true, like, old school guard prospect who's just kind of like 330 pounds. Like he definitely is very scheme specific. Utah didn't run a ton of outside zone. They're more of a gap and power system, which is why I think you probably saw him play more tackle in college. But overall, I think he's a seamless fit into a guard center flexibility, in an outside zone scheme. My friends at Utah did tell me that he was their emergency center over the last 2 seasons in case anything ever really happened. He was the guy that they would, plug in if they really ever needed to. So him and Cam Rising would always take snaps together on Thursdays in the last practice to make sure they were always on the same page, just in case anything, went crazy. So, I love his versatility. He started at 3 different positions, both tackle spots and right guard as a freshman at Utah. And I think his calling card is obviously that athleticism, but the way that he uses his length, because he's got great arm length and he's able to one-arm stab. He's able to snatch. Like he uses his length at such a high level. And that's something that you see repeatedly is just the versatility in which he's able to win with his hands. So his hand technique is pretty refined for somebody who, Utah's not like an offensive line factory by any means in terms of producing NFL talent. But he became a real technician over the last couple of years. And so from an athleticism standpoint, from a technique standpoint, there's a ton to like. I think he is a little questionable in terms of like recovery ability and anchor ability. He's not the strongest overall player naturally. But there's a ton of things to like here. And like I said, I think he's a seamless, like outside zone guard convert in the NFL. I think he could play some center as well. So obviously this is a Utah connection, but I'm not the only guy who likes Braden Daniels, man. I think his film is legitimately good. His RAS score is off the charts. So ton to like about Braden Daniels as an interior offensive line project.
Yeah, give Utah some credit. We had Sam Tevy, of course. We had Nick Ford last year. We had
it's like one every 3 years, pretty much. But
yeah, okay, nice. So Daniels of those 3 is the only one that I've watched. Talk to me about Chandler Zavala.
Yeah, Chandler Zavala. He played left guard next to Icky Ikwonu. And,
Mm.
you know, going back and watching some of that tape was ridiculously fun, man. Like
Yeah.
these two guys were just maulers next to each other. So, you know, one thing that I noticed in his conversation with the Bootleg podcast is that they were pretty heavily outside zone. And then this year they did a lot of gap and power scheme stuff as for this year's rushing attack there. So there's a lot of schematic versatility for him. I don't think he necessarily knows how to really use his athleticism just yet. I think that's kind of what I would say in terms of like how explosive he is. He's kind of unsure of himself, but he is a mauler in the run game, man. And his leg drive is fantastic. His power off of the ball is fantastic. And he can do all of the gap and power stuff. He can do all the outside zone stuff. So it's just like a versatility thing for me, as well as being able to just be like a truly powerful player. So he's somebody like when I do mock drafts where he's like always constantly there in like the 6th, 7th rounds, and I don't really get it. He's kind of like the guy from Oklahoma last year for you, Marquise Hayes. Yeah. So I was late into grading him, but I think there's just a lot of untapped potential there because the technique is not necessarily where I think matches up with like the way that he talks about certain things. Like if you listen to him talk in that interview, you hear what kind of, you know, mentality he has, and I don't think that's necessarily caught up just yet to his on-field technique. So I think there's some coaching up you have to do, but in terms of athleticism, in terms of just his sheer power, I think there's a ton to like with Zavala.
Oh man, I gotta watch that tape then just to watch Icky Ikwonu again.
Yeah.
that sounds fun. Good stuff. Okay, so not really much for me to add at this point because Gaines is my number 8 and Daniels is my number 7. You already talked about Daniels, we already talked about Gaines. So number 6 for me, I feel like doesn't count, but I run out of time. So Cody Mock is going to be my guy from North Dakota State at number 6. If I had watched another intra offensive lineman that I wanted to have a bit higher, then Mock probably just wouldn't make the list. I was surprised to see him. I figured it was like what's his name from last year? Not Valdir. There was another North Dakota State tackle last year who was not as athletic, more of like a power sort of tackle guy who now plays guard for the Bengals. I don't recall his name. It's killing me. I think it starts with a V. Anyway,
Cordell Volson.
Yeah. So I figured it'd be kind of like that, where you know his skill set, his movement skills, or whatever would best translate to something on the inside. And maybe that is the case for Cody Mock as well. But I really didn't see guard as much here. At least it wasn't very obvious to me.
Yeah.
I know he's like 6'4". I don't recall what his arm length was. But he can move. And I think he played really well at tackle. So I get why someone would keep him there. But if you get a guard, you get a heck of a guy. Great play strength, great on the move, plenty of leg drive, can steer defenders out of the way if need be. Really didn't have any problems, I thought, with the competition that he faced. But then that's also kind of the detractor with all of this, is that I never saw anybody particularly challenge him with anything other than your typical 2 or 3 rushes that you can do. And so you don't really know how he's going to respond to those things at the NFL level. Not that I expect every college rusher to be, you know, some elite, you know, Aiden Hutchinson, I can throw 10 moves at you sort of rusher, but there just wasn't a lot for me to like, okay, he can respond to that and that move inside and that move outside and this speed rush and the power. Like I couldn't quite see exactly. So is that really a knock? Not really, but I can't put him much higher than that. I really did like what he did on film. I really didn't have a lot of questions after watching him. It's really just how does he respond to those things in those situations? And maybe I'd have to go look at the Senior Bowl, I believe he played at, right? To really see how he responded to something a bit different.
Yeah, I remember in the actual game, that roster had some like injuries on the last day of practice, so they only had like 7 offensive linemen, and Mock was playing literally all 5 positions, left to right, and there were, I think it was the center who finished the game. So from a versatility standpoint, I think he showed a lot at the Senior Bowl. I think his film, to me, I don't necessarily understand why you have to kick him inside. Like I think he can survive at tackle. Like I think this is a little different than Dylan Radins too. Dylan Radins didn't necessarily have the kind of like power and strength and anchor that you want out of a tackle, and also I don't think he was as tall and long as Cody Mock is. So I struggle with him in terms of his evaluation, in terms of switching him positions, because like to me, like I like his tackle tape a lot. I think his tackle tape is pretty quality stuff. So I did not have him in here. I might end up switching him into your offensive line, but for now, he's going to stick at tackle for me. Because I just don't think that he really struggles with any of the stuff when it comes to like tackle converting to guard. I think he can survive out there. Like that's the difference from like Brady Daniels, who obviously I'm a big fan of in terms of interior offensive line, but he's got some strength question marks in terms of anchoring against speed rushes out in space, right? I think like that's his big thing in terms of just like his sheer strength ability. I don't think that's a concern for Cody Mauch. I think he's strong enough to stay outside at tackle. So I don't know. I struggle with that one. I went back and forth a couple of times. Right now I have him at tackle. Maybe that ends up changing, but I like his tape a lot. Like you said, I think there's a lot to like on visible there with his hand technique, with his strength, with his athleticism. So Cody Mauch is somebody I'm interested in. I just haven't nailed down like what position do I think he plays in the NFL just yet.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right, so we'll do 5 through 3 here next. Make sure I have my list right. Again, this is really going to show how good this interior offensive line class is. Number 5 for me, I have John Michael Schmitz, the center from Minnesota.
Yeah.
And then number 4, I have Osiris Torrance from Florida.
Oh, interesting. You have Avila over him too, huh? Okay.
I do, yes. And then, number 2, I have Steve Avila from TCU. So I think all 3 of these guys are, I think they're definitely second round players. I think all 3 of them are top 50 prospects in my opinion. I know the Chargers have met with John Michael Schmitz. I think it was formerly at the Combine, if I'm not mistaken. I think Gavino was first on that one. Osiris Torrance, I think, is a quality prospect. But Steve Avila, to me, is the most schematic versatile of the 3. And I think he could play all 3 positions as well. And he did so in college too. So Osiris Torrance is more of kind of a power gap guard for me. I think he has fantastic tape. Extremely powerful at the point of attack. Probably has the strongest grip strength of any of these offensive linemen from the interior, in my opinion. I just have some athleticism question marks, like not anything major, just some minor things in terms of his range, in terms of his ability to get out to the second level. And same kind of thing with John Michael Schmitz. I think he's a very high quality center prospect. Some people have compared him to Creed Humphrey. I think that's frankly kind of disrespectful to Creed Humphrey.
Those are 2 different players, I think.
Yes, very different players. I don't understand why that's being thrown out there, because Creed Humphrey was like literally like 98th percentile athleticism from the center position. Frankly, still doesn't make any sense that he fell as far as he did in the draft. So I just think those 2 players are a little bit more, boxed into. Michael Schmitz is a center only, probably in a power scheme. Osiris Torrance is a guard only, probably in a power scheme. So Steve Avila, I think, can play all 3 positions, and I think he can play in any scheme. I think he's scheme proof, one of the few players in this class that is scheme proof. And that just means a lot to me. I think his technique is fantastic all across the board. Watching him execute reach blocks, backside reach blocks, frontside reach blocks, I think he does truly fantastic work in that regard. He's not as powerful as the other 2, but shows good enough. And then also, I think his recover ability really stands out in comparison to those 3, into the other 2 as well. So Steve Avila for me checks every single box. I think he's a player who in like a normal interior offensive line class probably has a stronger case for, number 1 or number 2. But there's some players here in a second from the Big Ten that I really love. So I really like Steve Avila. If the Chargers had gone down this path, right, where Trey Pipkins isn't back, Jamari Sawyer is your right tackle, I would have loved to get Steve Avila in the second round and have him play one of the guard spots next to, whatever happened there. But that's not the case. That's not what happened. But still, I love Steve Avila.
Yeah, me too. Let me quickly just add these guys over here. So at number 5, I have Osiris Torrance. At number 4, I have Steve Avila. At number 3, I have Joe Tip. Is it 2 P's?
2 P's and 2 N's. Yep.
Pittman from, oh God, what's that school again? I always get those ones mixed up. Wisconsin. There we go. It was either that or Nebraska. I had a 50-50 shot. I always forget those two. Okay, so I have seen that Osiris Torrance has been like the IOL one kind of.
Yeah, like universally, everybody just has him there.
Yeah. Okay, so I was kind of panicking going into this, thinking that like not okay, but time out. This isn't a bad player at all. Like he's at number 5, but it's a heck of a class. So I don't want to say anything like he was someone I noticed last year and took like I rarely remember players from the previous year. When I was trying to watch Gene DeLance, I was like, oh, who's that guy? And I remember Osiris Torrance being a standout when I was trying to watch Gene DeLance. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll note that guy. And lo and behold, like good player then, good player now. This is a really, really solid player. I do have Steve Avila higher as well. The dude's built like Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, like compared to that's the fattest Harry Potter book.
Okay, I was gonna say.
Not fattest, the thickest book, I should say.
There you go.
Yeah, just a square dude. You square him up in the run game, he can square up anybody, beat up any run game. You try to power rush him and you're toast. I do like that point about him being the most versatile. Obviously, I have Michael Schmitz higher, and of course, the guy from Northwestern higher. But I do actually like that point about him being a bit more versatile. So that's good. Tippmann, I know you very much so like him, of course. I think he's either 1 or 2 on your list. So I'm going to just like, wait, Torrance transferred to Florida last year? I thought he was a 4-year player at Florida.
No, he was a Louisiana guy, but I was with you. I thought that he was there last year too.
Well, there was some really good guard there last year that I have no idea who was. Forget it. Wow, I should never evaluate Florida players. Apparently, I just don't know anything about Florida players. Ventrell Miller and now Osiris Torrance. Anyway, Tippmann is fantastic. It really, I do prefer the 2 center prospects over the 2, I guess, better guard prospects. Although one of them's more of a tackle guard convert. So okay, yeah, go for it with Tippmann.
Cool. Yeah, totally understand. I thought Torrance was there last year as well, so don't even worry about it. Yeah, so number 2, I have Joe Tippmann from Wisconsin, so I'm just going to copy and paste that there. And then number 1 for me, I do have Peter Skoronski as a guard. I know that's not a super popular take on Twitter. I know a lot of people want to see him sticking at tackle first. So I think he does have some range question marks and some length question marks. Like I know that he went to Northwestern, and I know that he replaced Rashawn Slater, but I don't see the comparison outside of that. No. So let's get that out of the way. I think
that's the first thing I wrote.
Rashawn was, again, an elite athlete for the position, and there were no athleticism question marks in terms of playing tackle. There were no range question marks. And also, Rashawn is an elite recovery artist as well, which is not the case for Peter Skoronski. I think Peter Skoronski, his best attribute is his ability to jump set and get on players quickly. And I think his athleticism does show up in just like the way that he understands run games working on the inside. So I like Peter Skoronski a ton. He's my highest grade interior offensive lineman. But to me, it's pretty clear that he is. I would play him on the interior first, and then if I needed him at right tackle, I could understand that. But I would have a hard time playing him at left tackle from the jump.
Yeah. So yeah, literally the first thing I wrote. Well, for starters, he's not Rashawn Slater, which isn't the knock on him. It's just like, I get it, but
he's not Rashawn Slater. Like, that's okay.
Right. No, of course. And I don't think anybody last year was Rashawn Slater or something like that. So, really, really good. Brandon Thorne thinks he's got the best hands in the class. I think he pointed out as the best pass protector in the class as well. He doesn't have particularly long arms, and that's kind of a concern, but I feel like there's so much patience with the way he plays where even though he might not have like the longest arms, I guess, there's a way that he times everything that I think is pretty notable and very, very outstanding. So, okay, I guess I might as well just add to the list. Skoronski is my number 1 as well, which means John Michael Schmitz is my number 2. I have Tippmann and Michael Schmitz graded the exact same. It really just was like a coin toss. I don't particularly care which one you have more than the other.
Sure.
Michael Schmitz is awesome. I think that maybe he's I wouldn't say he's a better mover because Tippmann in the run game is a freaking hell of a mover. I love watching him in the run game.
Yeah.
And you watch you didn't even ever watch the Super Bowl recently, right? With Jason Kelsey pulling and jumping in front of guys. Like, that's kind of what Tippmann can do. But Michael Schmitz, I just think maybe is a bit better mover. In pass protection, I think he does a bit more with his hands in pass protection. So I like him a bit more there. And maybe there's some preference, but otherwise, like to me, it's just a coin toss. Like I don't have a real true reason why one is higher than the other. So yeah, I really like Skoronski. I really like Michael Schmitz.
Yeah, Michael Schmitz is fun, man. He does a lot of good things. I do actually think he could play guard. Like I think that is not out of the question for him. So that maybe could be something that it could differentiate him a little bit from guys like Joe Tippmann. But Joe Tippmann to me is just he's a unique player at center, man. Like we don't traditionally see somebody who's 6'6", 315, and I think his arm length is like 34.5 inches. Like he's a tall center, and that's not usually something the way that we usually see the position played. But the way that he's able to get out in the run game, man, like he's a fun player to watch. Like he's one of the most fun players I've watched on tape so far because Wisconsin would use him as a puller like every other play. It felt like just get this guy out in space and let him just destroy people. And I think that was incredibly fun to watch. So I think there are some power question marks in terms of his ability to, win instantly. I think that is something that's a bit of a concern for me, but I think he's the best recover artist in this class, man. Like the way that he's able to use his length to quickly redirect, I think really stands out as well. So, I think for a team that's really creative in the run game, like Joe Tippmann to me would be a fantastic pick. Like the Giants, for example, who do need a center, they use John Feliciano a lot in that regard too, in terms of his ability to get out in space and do some fun things with him. So, Joe Tippmann to me would be a great fit for the Giants. But just overall, I think, whenever you're talking about the center position, the kinds of physical outliers that you're able to get, like those it just gives you such a big advantage going forward because he's, a 98th percentile athlete. He's taller, he's longer. So there's some things that you have to work around with him, but I think his upside here is just tremendously high.
Yeah, no, tons of upside there. Absolutely. I really think that with honestly how I felt about both centers, and then I guess Skoronski as well, I just feel like you can do more with them than the two guards. Avila being a bit more than Torrance, but I feel like with someone like Tippmann, someone like Michael Schmitz, with Skoronski, although Skoronski is going to be a guard, I feel like you can design your offense around them. And watching Zion Johnson last year, you just see that some guys are able to do more and ask to do more and can handle more. And I feel like Tippmann for sure in the run game can handle a lot immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Chorizo asked this question earlier. I do want to touch on this, and I also want to touch on the center of the future question. So you talked about this on Twitter. I know Chorizo is not on Twitter, but if Zion were in this class, where would he be for you?
Zion Johnson would be an easy number one for me in this class. Number one in this class, number one in his class, number one in the previous class. I just think that what he was able to do, I'm not saying he was perfect, but he was so freaking good. Like the film was good, the numbers were good, the RAS was good. Like everything was so good about him. Multi-positional, great player, asked to do so much. You want him in the run game, he's great. You want him in the pass protection, he's great. There really just wasn't a whole lot to knock on Zion Johnson, so he'd be number one in this class for sure.
Yeah, I would definitely agree there. Zion was a top 5 player for me last year overall in the class as an interior offensive lineman. So I think this draft class as a whole is better. So like from the big board perspective, I don't think he would be as high because I think I had him as like a 7.25 grade, if I remember correctly. Maybe potentially a little bit higher, but I had him pretty close to like blue chip prospect for me. And so right now, I think I had him at number 5 overall. I think this year, in terms of his big board grade, he'd probably be closer to like 10, 11, 12. Just because I do think this class is better. And again, I have not graded quarterbacks specifically this year. I didn't do it last year either. So maybe that kind of changes a little bit. But Zion, I think, is just a different animal in terms of the versatility that he brings. Like a lot of people thought he could have played center. Still think that. You're talking about one of the safest players in last year's class. And I think this year too, like there's no question marks, right? Like Peter Skoronski, is he a tackle? Is he guard? I think he's a guard. Joe Tippmann has some anchor question marks, in my opinion. He's got some flexibility question marks. Steve Avila, same thing, center, guard. What is he? Cyrus Torrance, John Michael Smits. Are they maybe a little bit more scheme dependent? With Zion, it was like he can He can do
Yeah.
power. He can do gap. He can do zone. He can play guard. He can play center. He played left tackle for a whole season at Boston College. Like, Zion Johnson was just such a great player to watch, man. And if he were in this class, he'd be number 1 for me too.
One. Okay, then where would you have? Was Kenyon Green your IOL too?
Yes, he was.
Okay, so where would he be? I guess, and then do you have a first on Skoronski?
I do not have a first on Skoronski. I have a very high second, so he'll be in my top. He'll be in my top 20, I think, for sure. In terms of Kenyon Green, I would probably have him behind Skoronski and behind Tittman.
Okay,
maybe behind Steve Avila too, but I think highest for me, he would be in this class would be number 3.
Yeah, I have a high second on Skoronski as well. Kenyon Green, top 3 probably in this class, I would think.
Yeah,
seems about right.
Yeah. Again, he was somebody who was a lot of fun, but he had some athleticism and range question marks too. So people want to complain about Zion, man. You should go watch some Kenyon Green rookie film and the numbers, and it's not great.
Kenyon Green, Ed Ingram, Dylan Parham, all these guys that played a ton. Go look at those numbers to begin with. And ended up being Spencer Burford in like the 5th round that ended up being statistically one of the best. So
yeah. Okay, couple late round center question marks. So again, Juice Scruggs from Penn State, Ricky Stromberg from Arkansas, guys in the chat here that are talking about. In terms of center of the future, Tyler, where are you at with that? Because Corey Linsley has not been restructured. There's again been some conversation about his knee tendonitis here. Where are you at in terms of drafting center of the future? Is it something that you're definitely talking yourself into this draft? Do you think they can wait another year? What's kind of your process there in addressing the backup center position right now?
I think that this is a sneaky round 3 option for the Chargers this year, which sounds odd, but consider Tom Telesco's draft history. I'm looking through what they do in the 3rd round. Now, okay, I need to watch more centers to actually specify who, and maybe you can speak to that because I don't know all of these guys.
Yeah,
I'm not expecting Tittman to be there in the 3rd round, and if he is, then fuck it, make that your pick because that's awesome.
Yeah,
but was Keenan Allen going to start? Was Chris Watt starting? Was Craig Mager starting? Was Max Turk, who was injured, was he going to play? Dan Feeney was behind Matt Slauson. Trey Pipkins was a project. You're looking at some of these guys. Josh Palmer wasn't projected to start. JT Woods was sitting behind Nasir Adderley. There's been a theme with Telesco's drafts where in that 3rd round range, they kind of look for somebody to, not that a 3rd rounder is always going to start, but there's really no spot for them at the time to get onto the field because there's 1 or 2 starters already ahead of them or the position group's been taken by a starter or whatever. I think that if you're looking at Corey Linsley and you see the drop off that the Chargers had last year on offense when he wasn't in the lineup, you can't afford to just have that drop off again. Now, maybe they go sign someone, and that's probably the most sensible thing is to go sign someone because, all in season, maybe you don't have to invest in a guy that early. But Telesco's really shown that he's willing to invest in a 3rd round pick and kind of have that player wait for a year, maybe 2 years. Now, Keenan Allen was by week 4 he had to play. But some guys like Max Turk, they drafted Max Turk out of USC for an entire redshirt freshman year, to do nothing but sit the entire rookie season. And so I think that, and again, Telesco's always got these surprises we're not ready for. I think that's something that they could address in the same vein, although much earlier or much later than the Eagles did. The Eagles did last year with, oh gosh, I'm blanking on his name, Cam Jurgens. Last year, did the Eagles need a center? No. Did they even need a guard? Not really, no. But they drafted him in the 2nd round because of the upside and just getting ready. And that's how you kind of develop offensive line as well. I think that the 3rd round is a sneaky spot for center for the Chargers this year.
Honestly, I could see it. I hadn't necessarily thought about it in that regard. I think my thought process has been able to get more of a swing guy early and then maybe take a center prospect later. But honestly, I that would not shock me. So in terms of 3rd round center prospects, like you mentioned, Joe Tittman, John Michael Schmitz, those guys I think are definitely gone at that point. They're both getting late 1st, early 2nd round conversation around them. Same thing with Steve Avila, who can play center. Some people think he's a center only prospect. which I disagree with. But so anybody behind Michael Schmitz for me, those are all guards. Again, I think Brandon Daniels could play center in a pinch. I think John Gaines could play center in a pinch. I don't think they're truly like center prospects. So, you know, Solo Man mentioned him. To me, I think Ricky Stromberg from Arkansas, excuse me, would kind of be my next one up. I think Oluwatimi from Michigan, he's not a super clean fit for the Chargers. I think he's, again, kind of a bit more gap power reliant than somebody who maybe can bring a little bit more versatility, because the Chargers under Kellen Moore are going to be versatile in the run game, man. They're going to do a lot of zone. They're going to do a lot of gap and power. They're going to do a lot of counter. Like, you're going to have a center who can move and a center who can get out in space and really get to that second level. Somebody like Corey Linsley. So I think Ricky Stromberg for me is probably the direction that I would lean in terms of that regard. If you're talking round 3, round 4 backup center, he's my choice. If you're talking about like round 6, round 7, I think Juice Scruggs from Penn State is a good option there as well. But you know, if they took him at round 3, I would be pretty floored by that one. So maybe he ultimately he's the pick. Again, not necessarily dark horse players. And we're talking about Arkansas and Penn State, but Ricky Stromberg at round 3 fits kind of like, oh, we're gonna get this guy maybe a round earlier than he's gonna go, like JT Woods did. And I think that, you know, him learning from Corey Linsley for a year, 2 years, whatever happens, Corey Linsley, we'll see. I would be about that. At just third round, I think would be a little rich for me.
Yeah, any mock draft we do, again, barring some ridiculous fall, which is unrealistic, I would not take a player in the third round. But I just feel like that's when we start to have that conversation, depending on who's there, knowing Tom Telesco in the third round, who's the guy that that was supposed to go in round 4 or 5 that we're going to take in the third round. Man, I also will not start right away. I think it could be center.
Yeah, as Everett points out, not a fan of drafting backups in the third
agree.
round. I agree. We're on the same page. You know, drafting a backup safety in the third round. Wasn't a huge fan of that pick. You know, it is what it is. But, you know, they do need depth, right? Like, whoever you draft in the third round is probably not going to be a starter. I think we're on the same page that if you draft like a pass rusher, if you pass someone early, or a receiver or a tight end, you're at least getting like an impact player, even like a safety, for example. I think, you know, you're getting an impact player who might not necessarily be a starter, but yeah, them taking center of the future in the third round, I think would be a little rich for me. But, you know, I will never complain necessarily about adding, you know, quality offensive line depth.
Yeah, you'll complain on the third round when they do that.
They take Ricky Stromberg over Marvin Mims. I'm going to be pissed.
You just worked that one into existence, man. Oh boy.
No, but Ricky Stromberg is a good prospect. Just, you know, third round would be a little rich for me.
Yeah,
is what it is.
I agree with Chris B, though, that I would rather draft a backup tackle. If I'm drafting one to be a backup, it's probably a backup tackle.
100%. I think, to me, if you're drafting somebody from this list, you know, I think John Gaines in the third may be a little bit too rich, but, you know, Andrew Voorhees cannot play this year. So, you know, we'll see what happens with him. But I certainly understand why somebody wouldn't necessarily grade him or put him in the top 10, because he's not going to play as a rookie. But, you know, if you can get Chandler Zavala or Braden Daniels in the third round, and that's your swing into your offensive lineman, I mean, those guys are going to play. They'll make a couple starts probably at this point. You know, just given injuries at the position, how it is around the league. So I would much rather get a guy who can really be a quality swing player for them than a true center prospect.
Last question. What is Voorhees' current like draft slot projection?
Yeah, man, it sucks. He was pretty like consistently second round kind of player, maybe early third. But now I think for the most part, people are talking about him as like a late day 3 dart throw. And if you're the Chargers, like I wouldn't hate it. Like, you would have to draft another offensive lineman before that.
Yeah.
Who could play again, because he's not going to play at all as a rookie. But, you know, if you have the flexibility and depth to be able to kind of redshirt a guy, you know, you're talking about if he comes back healthy from his ACL injury, you're getting a potential top 60 player at the position. So I would still take a chance on him, probably more so than other people are. I think you probably have to get into the right situation. The Chargers don't really have any depth right now. So I would not take him as my first offensive line pick, but if they take Zavala or Daniels in like the third, fourth round, and then Voorhees is sitting there in the sixth round, I don't see why not.
Yeah, I'm all for it. And again, there's precedent.
There is. All right, Tyler, any other thoughts here about the interior offensive line group?
Nope.
Man, I didn't realize we had been talking for 46 minutes. I guess this really is my Super Bowl.
Yeah, I didn't add much to this. Honestly, I had to kind of fly through the grades for these guys. But I mean, hey, it's an important conversation to have. And with Corey Linsley's knee issues and all that, like, got to talk about it. Got to put it out there into the void.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we'll take questions here for about 15-20 minutes, and then we'll call it good for today. So appreciate everybody for sticking around for our interior offensive line topic. If you guys have questions in general about the draft, now is the time to ask them. So fire away.
I'm putting together my big board. I'm at 75 players. Finally.
Nice.
I know. Good gracious. I still have a ways to go, but I don't know how I ended up at 75, but those linebackers got on there and, filled it up.
Well, you'll have a lot more time after this week after you finish the TPA. Woo. So
yeah, I'll get to 175 next week.
Can watch 100 players in a week.
Easy, no problem.
Yeah. I mean, YouTube exists.
It does. I can get through some running backs.
Yeah. Rodrigo Negrete earlier asked, "Who's the best offensive line in this year's draft?" I think for me, that's Paris Johnson, the tackle from Ohio State. Just freakish build. He's got like 36-inch arms, man, and like his athleticism is off the charts. So I think there are some question marks there in terms of like his just like experience at the position. I don't think he's super refined. He actually played guard for I think the first 2 years that he played at Ohio State, and then last year was his first year at left tackle. So he's a bit more of a project. But in terms of like upside and his ability to play right now, like Paris Johnson is a fantastic tackle.
I have not watched any tackles, but I can't wait to get into it after this week.
The tackles are fun too. I don't think there's as good depth at tackle as interior offensive line, but it's a fun top of the group for sure.
Nice.
Rodrigo also asking about Jonathan Mingo. He's somebody that you have watched recently. So what did you see from Mingo last week? I think it was.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, I just was trying to find some more stuff on him to know who this player was. I haven't slapped a grade on him yet. Fast player, big player, was asked to do like 3 things at Ole Miss: run a curl, catch a screen, go forward. And I don't think that's necessarily on him, like in his inability to run certain routes. Occasionally he'd break for an out. Occasionally he'd run something a little bit different than those 3 things. And you could see that there's something there. But the Ole Miss just didn't ask him to run a lot. So it's kind of sight unseen. But I think he's a guy that's going in like the 5th, 6th round projection that I think can kind of outperform that. So a lot to like there for sure. I just don't have a grade on him yet.
Yeah, I mean, that size definitely stands out in this class. But that Ole Miss offense, that is very vanilla. People have called the Tennessee offense a Mickey Mouse offense a little bit. And I think Ole Miss is even worse in that regard.
I could say so. I would agree with that.
Yeah. The True Blue, he says, if we missed out on Marvin Mims in round 2, what would you think if they went A.T. Perry in round 3? Yeah, from a height, weight, speed, RAS standpoint, he definitely fits what the Chargers have traditionally liked. He's somebody who I think he checked in at 6'3", so at the combine, or 6'3.5". I think he is fast-ish. I don't think he's got that kind of deep speed that the Chargers need at this point. I think he's much closer to Mike Williams stylistically than somebody like Quentin Johnston is. There's not a ton of juice after the catch from A.T. Perry, but I think in a vacuum, I think he's a really quality receiver prospect, and I think he's worth a watch. But I think for the Chargers, it's a very awkward fit with him and Mike Williams on the same team, potentially.
Okay. I haven't watched him yet. So
I think he's worth a watch, but
okay.
I don't think he's like a clean fit for the Chargers because, like, yes, they have to find like a future X receiver potentially, but they have one now. And so like drafting A.T. Perry, like I don't see what kind of role he has, you know, in on this specific team. So I think he's a quality player, but they need like a true starting Z who can really take the top off the field, give you some yards after the catch. They don't have that right now, and I think like future X, like that could just be Josh Palmer.
Yeah. How does he compare to Josh Palmer?
A.T. Perry?
Yeah.
I think Palmer gives you a little bit more after the catch. I think he gives you a little bit more true like vertical speed. A.T. Perry, what I will say in terms of his strengths, his catch radius is ridiculous. He will catch anything that you throw at him. Just his ball tracking ability in that regard also is truly top notch. He's a pretty precise route runner. I don't think he's like an elite route runner, but he can do more things than just like run go balls and like run deep posts and stuff like that Wake Forest was really asking him to do. So again, I like him. I think for the Chargers, it's a tad redundant with, you know, Mike Williams and Josh Palmer on this team.
Gotcha.
Lots of receiver questions. Andre Osivas, I have not watched any Princeton tape. I don't know many people who truly have, but he's fast, so sign me up.
Yeah, I think the one thing I saw that I think his RAS comp was Tyrell Williams, and that's as far as I got for comparisons.
Yeah. I think that he's somebody in like scenarios where I like go defense or a tight end like the first two picks. I think doubling down at receiver makes a lot of sense, and he's somebody that I like will try and see as like the second receiver if I can snag him in a mock draft. So again, have not watched him, but he's fast, he's tall, makes sense. Maybe that's the third round dart throw that we don't really see coming.
Sure, but Chargers fans don't care if he's fast. It doesn't matter.
That's true. That's true. Robert Beal from Georgia. I have not watched him. Have you?
Nope. I don't even know who that is. No offense.
Me neither. Sorry, Solo Man. Oh, we got a Raiders fan in here. Why?
Gotta catch up on the interior offensive line film breakdown, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Chris B asking about Dalton Kincaid. He says, I think he can be a top 5 tight end potentially. So Dalton's my tight end 1. You know, that we did that show pretty early. I guess Beal is an edge rusher from Georgia who ran like a 4.5. So
I refuse to watch any more Georgia tape. I'm out. I've watched too much Georgia over and over.
Too many Georgia, too much Alabama. I get it.
Yeah.
In terms of Dalton Kincaid, like he's my tight end 1. I think people need to cool it on the Travis Kelce talk. First of all, I'm going to throw that out there. I love my guy, but Travis Kelce is like one of the best tight ends ever. So let's not do that. But overall, I think he really fits the mold of what the modern NFL is looking for from a tight end in terms of like potentially flexing out to the slot, flexing out wide, creating mismatches on offense. Like that's what Dalton Kincaid did for Utah. And I think it's a seamless transition for the Chargers, for any team who really drafts him. You're not getting like an elite blocker by any means. I think he can hold his own. I think he can do certain things well. He's also played the position for like 3 years. So yeah, he's an older prospect, but he was a walk-on at the University of San Diego because he played basketball in high school mostly. And he was a receiver at San Diego, and then he transitioned to tight end at Utah. So yes, he's older. Yes, he has the broken back, which I've said before is should not be an issue. He's going to be ready to play for mini camp, ready to rock for the season. So Dalton Kincaid offers a ton of upside, in my opinion, because he's so new to the position. But if you are taking him thinking you're going to get like this inline old school tight end, like you're going to be disappointed. If you're going to take him and use him as a big slot receiver, I think you'll be very excited about him and the mismatches that he can create for your offense.
Yeah, I agree. I'm kind of thankful that the Chargers, if they go that direction, have Kellen Moore as a coordinator, not Joe Lombardi. I just feel like you'd almost have to go Michael Mayer or Darnell Washington or something if it was Joe Lombardi. With Dalton Kincaid, Kellen Moore, I think it's a much better fit there. Benjamin Solak did like his top 40 or whatever. It had like a comp for each player.
Yeah, I saw that with Dalton. Yep.
Yeah, not Travis Kelce was his comp. I don't know what his comp actually is, but that was pretty funny.
Yeah, I think stylistically, Daniel Jeremiah has compared him to Zach Ertz. I think that makes a lot of sense in
Sure.
terms of his, his ability to come in as a big slot receiver who can kind of function as a blocker. If you draft Dalton Kincaid, you're going to have to make sure that you have a consistent blocking tight end to pair with him, right? Like you're just not going to get that kind of value out of him, in my opinion. But in terms of his comparison to Zach Ertz, I think he's a little bit more. I think he has a little bit more juice, particularly after the catch, than Zach Ertz really ever did. But if you picture Zach Ertz with a little bit more juice, I think that is pretty close to what you're looking at with Dalton Kincaid.
Nice. I didn't realize Zach Ertz has been in the league since like at least 2013.
Yeah, he's been around for a long time. But again, I'm curious to see how his lack of testing would impact his value for the Chargers and how they would have him, because that over the last 6-7 years has really been something that they value a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler, have you graded any corners yet?
No.
Okay. So I've only done the top 4 corners and Brian Branch right now. All 5 of those players have first round grades for me. This corner class is fantastic. I've seen a little bit of other players, like Julius Brents from Kansas State, I think would be really fun with the Chargers. He's a 6'3", longer, more physical corner. So he would be fun. I think if the Chargers are going to add a corner, I want more size and physicality. I think they need that to balance out what they have with Asante Samuel Jr. and as well as JC Jackson if he's healthy too. So I think like you're looking for a Michael Davis replacement essentially. And so Julius Brents, I think, makes a lot of sense there. Have not watched him a ton, but Garrett Williams from Syracuse is somebody who has a good amount of buzz as well from what I've seen. So haven't finished the corner class, but those are 2 guys that I think would make some sense from a size, physicality standpoint.
Kind of staying on that theme, one of the things we didn't talk about last time from the press conferences was Telesco said he's operating under the assumption that the Chargers will have cornerback JC Jackson for this season. What did you kind of make of that? Or people in the chat, what did you make of that?
I took that as like mid-season maybe.
I
would be very surprised if they had him to start the season, like if he were fully ready week 1. Maybe he's just like recovering at a crazy pace right now, but I think that's more like mid-season, and even then, like there's no guarantee that he hits his full stride after that. So
right,
I think they will draft a corner at some point. Jorge Rodriguez saying it's in the first. If it's Brian Branch, I think that counts. Other than that, I don't think that they would really take, Deontay Banks in the first round or Joey Porter Jr. I just think that like they're going to have JC at some point. I don't think they necessarily need like a true starter.
Yeah, I think they have to try to make that work. Unfortunately, I think they have to try to make that work.
Yeah. So I'm expecting like outside corner, like true outside corner. I think they will try and, take another shot on a potential Michael Davis replacement, like they did with Dean Leonard. But I think that's going to come on day 3.
Yeah, I could see that.
Like Corey said, he would temper expectation with Chase Sizzle. I like the nickname, and I agree with the overall point. I'm not expecting JC to do a ton this season.
We got most of the questions there.
All right, so it looks like the chat's dying down a little bit here. So if you guys haven't asked a question, go for it. Again, we'll take questions for like 2-3 more minutes. So fire away at this point. If you want a food question, go for it. I'm scrolling up, making sure I didn't miss any.
Yeah, I was light in the chat today. Everyone's like busy with life or something and dinner and, important stuff.
This is what it is.
All right, well, we can do this one from Jorge Rodriguez. Wow. What's more likely? They go offense or defense in the first?
I think it's more likely that they go offense.
Ooh, I'm gonna go defense. I'm gonna go defense, edge, slot corner, safety, sneaky DT, maybe linebacker. No, I hope.
God, no. I like Jack Campbell, but man.
Jack Campbell, a receiver, and then a backup center. Here we go. That's our first 3 picks.
I just think like the edge rushers who are worthy of the 21st pick will be on. I think Nolan Smith, Miles Murphy, Lucas Van Ness all off the board at that point. So maybe they trade down and they take Will McDonald or Felix Sander DK Uzama. I'd be cool with that. If they stick and pick, I think it's going to be offense. I think it's going to be one of the receivers or one of the tight ends.
Ooh. Oh.
Oh, now we're getting a lot of questions. Okay.
Go for it.
Okay, so Jason Greer, appreciate the super chat. How's life treating us? It's fantastic. Cannot complain at all. Professionally doing a lot of great things. I know Tyler is as well, finishing his ed TPA. So life's doing great, man. Tyler's getting married. You know, Tyler can't complain at all about life.
I can complain about this ed TPA. I'll complain about that. We have another hour to go, right?
Yeah.
It's a thing that I have to do, but it's gonna be done.
Yeah. So Brooke got her master's before I did, and so she had to do her ed TPA. And it was brutal, man. It's so much work to become a teacher if you do a master's and credential at the same time. So, you know, my counseling master's degree was pretty crazy at the end too. So, you know, the final push of finishing your master's degree is crazy.
Yeah, senioritis, but 10 years later.
Exactly. Did people not know that? I feel like that was pretty, because Jorge said Tyler's getting married. People knew about that, right? Like we've talked about that on the show.
Sure, probably. I think I've said fiance enough times, but yes, I am getting married in July. Steven's going to be there. Kyle Van Noy is not going to be there. That's okay.
He'll be there with his doppelganger, I guess you could say.
Exactly. He's sending his clone in his stead. So.
Just really quickly about Kyle Van Noy, man. He went on to the Pat McAfee show this weekend to explain what soaking is. I don't know if we want to get into that.
Yeah, please. Why not? Whatever.
I was dying though, man. It was one of the funniest things I've ever seen on the internet. And oh man, you guys got to go watch the video if you haven't yet. But it's fantastic.
Wow, I did not realize. I'm assuming he just like threw a last minute question at him.
Yeah, I have no idea how that originated. I don't know the context of how it got brought up, but
like he didn't walk up there with the film room thing and like the pointer and like
okay. No. No, Kyle was like mid workout. Like they just like they were talking about it. I think somehow it got brought up on the show. And then they just like, hey, we know a BYU guy. Let's call Kyle and like see what he has to say about it.
Did he take it seriously?
He was like really explaining to them to like, I think he was like, he knew that it was funny, but
yeah,
they were like, Kyle, did you do that? And he's like, no, I followed all the rules 100% of the time.
Wow.
Oh man, good stuff. It was really, really funny.
Fascinating.
All right, I think that's a good place to stop it, right?
Yes, gotta stop at soaking. Can't go past that.
Okay.
We're so stupid. Why there's 100 of you here? 3,000 people watched our linebacker episode. Like, you guys are dumb. But
thank you.
But thank you.
But we love you. Oh man. All right. So that's gonna do it today. We're gonna have a great episode planned for you guys on Thursday. Because we're not gonna be able to record again until Thursday, but Alex Katzen and Gavino Borges are going to be joining us on Thursday for a Guilty as Charged and Chargers Wire crossover event. So it's going to be a lot of fun. and cannot wait to dive into the draft with those two, who do great work. I mean, when I did our video about trading up, Alex Katzen knew right off the bat who like some sleeper tight end from Air Force was and like everything about him. So, we're going to be a little bit out of our depth there in terms of late round sleepers, but it's going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait for that. And should be a lot of fun. If you're confused about the previous topic, go watch the Pat McAfee show about it. He will explain it. I do not want to explain it right now. So let Pat McAfee and Calvino explain it. So, Tyler, that's going to do it for us, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you guys on Thursday.